Okay, so welcome back for another episode of What Does It Mean to Be Human, a podcast on life, meaning, and everything. And as usual, myself, Ron Saylor, joined by my good mate Ben Gare, two guys having a chat about what it means to be human. Ben, how are you today, mate?
Yeah, I've been feeling a bit under the weather the last couple of days, so I'm pushing through. But I'm doing. That's about all I can say right now.
Yeah, well, good on you for pushing through, mate. I can hear it in your voice, and I think it's good that you've used, you made a choice to be here today, and you're here.
Well, one of those things with life is that like sometimes consistency is key, and showing up, especially when you don't really want to. But we've been in personal development spaces for a long fucking time, and you see that a lot in those spaces, particularly where it's like, just as your personal, mental, and emotional issues are coming up, you'll find any excuse to not show up, because it's like you'll have the best excuse in the world for it, but it's like, yeah, it's more about, I really don't want to, because I know if I push through this spot, I could be facing something that is deeply held and part of my core issues and whatever. And I don't really want to go there. I've seen that in so many Tantra courses and breathwork personal development courses. That it's just like, yeah, right when it gets that crunchy time, you kind of have the best excuse in the world to not go forward. But yeah, it's not always the truth. It's just, you're hitting your own personal wall of what you're comfortable looking at within yourself or facing at that time. And it's okay. It's just that know that if that's a consistent thing that we all kind of meet at some point, that maybe there's something behind it.
Yeah, totally agree. I think what resonates with me with what you're sharing is consistency. How like you can see how some people have a resistance or they have an excuse, like what you're saying. And if that's something like, to put in your awareness, guys, if that's something that you find yourself doing on a regular basis, right? Either having a reason or excuse not to do something or not to, whether it's simple as like this, having a podcast, right? Ben's not feeling 100%. He still showed up because he knows it's something that drives him. He's passionate about this, and him being sick is not going to stop him. It's easy for him to just send me a message and say, look, I don't feel good today. Let's leave it. Yeah. I know I've done that before, right? But he's here. Myself, something similar, not being sick. This morning when I was, driving into work, I was like, I don't know if I feel like doing the podcast today. And not for any other reason other than just being lazy, and then buying into my own stories of like, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy to sit here. I don't have the power within myself to sit here with another creative being, someone who's open and aware of their emotions and their surroundings and their feelings and their beliefs and all this sort of stuff, to have this conversation. And part of me was like, fuck, should I cancel? And there was like, and that was a trigger part. That was the reactionary part, right? This is kind of the ego, the identity, the belief that's going, yeah, cancel. But then I was able, because of the training that we've done, I was able just to sit and pause and go, what's really going on here? Why am I coming up? Why do I feel like I want to cancel this when I'm not sick? There's nothing physically wrong with me. There's nothing mentally wrong with me, but there's almost like there's this block or roadblock coming up that's, giving me this thought as in, well, just do it tomorrow, right? It can't be that hard to do it tomorrow. And it's like, well, how hard can it be to do it today then? If it's not hard tomorrow, why is it hard today? So I was able to sit in that process, and I just said to myself, all right, well, what's going on, Ron? What's coming up for you? And they were the things that came up for me, right? My 3 core beliefs are, I'm not worthy, not good enough, and I don't have the power. I'm powerless, right? So by me showing up, everyone's seeing what I'm essentially putting myself out there. I'm being vulnerable. I'm exposing myself to the world, sitting here with Ben. if I don't do that, then no one really can see me. No one can criticize me, right? I can't criticize myself because I haven't done anything. I haven't been seen. I'm not giving myself. I'm not being of service. So for me, that was like the little thought that said, okay, Ron, well, we can clearly see where this is coming from. Is it really who you are? Is this the person you want to present to yourself and to the world on a daily basis? And the answer was no, that's not who I want to present as, right? Because I know I'm more than that. And that's, for me, it was like, okay, it's on. Because it's the points, like you were saying, but it's at those periods where you feel like the least motivated to do something is a strong indication that you probably need some will, some focus, and some discipline to actually push through it. Yeah. Because the power is actually taking that step. And the power is actually acknowledging that there's something coming up for you without just brushing it off. Because it's all about the awareness. We talk about awareness a lot on this podcast. Because for us, a lot of it begins with awareness. So once you have the awareness, then you can start to navigate through the seas, through the waters of your own orientations, your own beliefs, your own mindsets, ego, identity, strategies, all that sort of stuff, right? And that's what's the key, is having that awareness. And it's important for us that when we see ourselves doing this stuff, that we stop. It only has to be a pause and just be aware of what's happening, acknowledge it. Because I think a lot of the times we kind of dismiss it and we go, oh, fuck it, it doesn't matter. I'll do it later. And in that moment, you've just given away your power. You've just given away your true self to a thought process, which really has no power over you, but you let it have power over you. So it's important to just have the awareness to say, okay, this is happening. What's my next step? What really do I want? What I want to do. And then really take that step. Excuse me. So that was a great share.
Yeah, and I suppose like this shows how deep-seated beliefs are. And we come from the school of thought that the ideas you form in early childhood affect the rest of your life, So whatever in our learning, it was the first 7 years is where you form most of the habits, beliefs, things like that reoccur in the rest of your life unless you choose to do therapy. Relationships usually do it, and businesses and stuff like that. But this shows how much, like you said, what were your core beliefs? It was being seen. Was
self-worth, not being good enough, and powerlessness.
Yeah, so I mean, again, they're not new ideas you've just come up with. They're coming from, I would suggest, your childhood. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is how far back these concepts go, because in the familial unit, these things get seeded, and then you've got 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of compiling that belief system through events that happen, or continually doing bad habits, or whatever it is. But how much these get reinforced. It's like, oh, I can't do it, or I'm not good enough, or if I show up, I'm going to get criticized, or if I blah, 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 all these things. So you've got all the ammunition you need to create the excuse to not do whatever it is that's going to push that belief system out altogether, because you can change it, you can get over it. It's just going to be having to face some uncomfortable bits of self, because ultimately that's what we're doing. It's just like those thoughts and beliefs were put in place as a reaction to your environment, or to something someone said, or where you fit in the family unit, and all that kind of stuff. So it comes from basis, and if you were to actually change, you would have to face all the things that are on the other side of change. And that's exactly when the excuses start to come up, and we start to go, oh, well, I don't want to go there, because that sounds uncomfortable, and this is the basis of a lot of shadow work and a lot of sort of digging into your unconscious and finding out the core of those beliefs and starting to change them and shift them and recreate your reality from conscious adult perspective, and it can be done. It definitely can be done. It's just, yeah, you have to get into the uncomfortable and in shadow aspects of self to start to change them.
Yeah, man, 100%. And that can be challenging for us sometimes, right? Is to actually step into the shadow. And you know what? As weird as this may sound, there's a lot of power when you step into your shadow, because you might actually be surprised at what comes up. And it's not always dark and negative and traumatic. There's a lot of light in the shadow. And I think it's important to bring that up. In my experience, in recent experience, I didn't have this before. Like, to me, the shadow was like something evil, conniving, traumatic. You know, I was like, I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to see what was there. But your shadow is part of who you are, right? It's kind of part of your ego. It's kind of part of your identity that developed from incidents as a kid, when you're a baby, right? Toddler, adolescent, teenager, adult, whatever, as you get older. So it's actually part of who you are. And there are processes that we can take you through where you can start to become aware of that. And there's a process where I take people through that shows them the actual power in their shadow. You'd be quite surprised. But I think what it is, trauma work is, like, as the word defines it, it's quite traumatic, you know. And if you don't have a good, if you don't have someone who's trained well and can hold a space for you, you're always going to kind of just relive that trauma in the therapy. You're going to reinforce all your beliefs and all your patterns. It's almost like, you know, we did this in rebirthing, right? We kind of just keep going down the rabbit hole, and that rabbit hole just doesn't stop. It's like, where's the end of this bloody hole? It just keeps going and going and going. And over the years, what I've learned is it's okay to go through that a little bit, to have some awareness, to start to learn about, you know, your shadow, and learn about, you know, what you formulated as thoughts, ideas, feelings, beliefs as a kid. You know, looking for mum's love, looking for dad's validation, you know, competitiveness with siblings, other family members, your place in the family dynamic, whether you're firstborn, second, third, fourth, fifth, wherever you are in the line, right? It kind of has an effect on us as we grow up. Either side, we have siblings, right? There's always going to be something happening. Mum's paying them more attention than me.
Or we don't have siblings at all. Or we don't have siblings at all, like me.
Actually, yeah. Well, it's
yeah. So we come out a bit weird in our own way.
Yeah. Hey, so you don't have any siblings at all, mate. So it's a different world for you, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. I stand corrected. Siblings, no siblings. There's always going to be something coming up, right? We're always going to
a different story comes.
We're always going to make up a story, and that's the point. Doesn't matter. There's always going to be a story that gives us some validation and gives us, like Ben's saying, like, it gives us the reinforcement, and it arms us with our excuses and weaponizes our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors and strategies, right? They're always going to be there. So it's important to, like, look at, okay, well, once I go down there and acknowledge some of my trauma, is how do I deal with it? Because you kind of need a structure around it. I feel these days it's very unsafe and can be more harmful than good. If you just open up that can of worms for the first time and you haven't prepared yourself for it, it's going to be an ugly ride. It's probably, you know, think back to when you were kids. I used to hate, like, you know, fast rides. It was never me. For me, that's what it would be like, you know, throwing up on like a really intense ride. It's not fun. So you need to be aware and, like, prepare yourself and go, okay, who's the right fit for me? At what level? Where am I willing to go? How far am I willing to go? Am I just at this point where I just want to mentalize it? You know, I just want to go, yeah, I kind of get it. Or am I ready to kind of sink into my heart and open up a little bit more? Am I ready to do some breath work? Well, you know, where's your level? Where are you at? And that's where you want to be, because if you go too hard too soon, you open up so much, it might put you in a worse place. And then you might start feeling bad about yourself, and then your old thoughts or wounds may come up, and you want to start criticizing yourself, or you want to compare yourself to other people. So it's kind of important to have the right guidance and understand at what level you're willing to go, because that's really what it comes down to. And people like us, like me and Ben, as facilitators, we know that we only will go with the person's willing. And I know from my experience, I don't know if you've done this as well, Ben, but there have been times where I've wanted to take them where I think they need to go. And let me tell you, it hasn't ended up very pretty for them. It's opened up too much for them and they weren't ready for it. But it's because my ego is like, oh, I'm a practitioner, I'm a therapist, I know better. I don't know better than you. At the end of the day, we know ourselves better than anybody. But a good therapist or practitioner or facilitator knows how to take the individual or the group based on where they're at. And it's important to find that. Not that I'm saying you need to come and work with us, but if you wanted to, you're more than welcome to. But all I'm saying is start off to see where you're ready. What level are you ready to sink into? You know, read some books, do some whatever. Just do your own research. Educate yourself so you're not giving your power away to anyone else, because it all starts with us. Find the power in yourself. Do your research. Do your education. Then start to step out and challenge yourself in what comes up. Make sure you've got a process around it where you've got a structure for support, because you don't want to open up that can of worms and then just like let everything out. You might just want to let a little bit of steam out, a little bit of gas or a couple snakes, whatever it may be, right? And then just stay on top so you can still function, because we still have to function in this world, right? Ben?
Yeah, I mean, look, so many cans of worms open up there that it's like, one thing I kind of wanted to mention, it's like not all trauma is necessarily trauma. And I think it's a loaded term, because what you may perceive as trauma and what I perceive as trauma can be two different things. Two people can have the same experience and one could take it as traumatic and one could take it as not. So don't go into the fear of, oh my God, I'm traumatized. You know, that's not the point. Often a lot of our issues or our core beliefs or whatever you want to state are misinterpretations of the situation, because your brain wasn't developed well enough, or you didn't understand the context or surroundings, or you're just going on the information you had and then you filled in the blanks to a story that may or may not be true. You know, and so and this goes back to kind of what you were saying about it's like, it doesn't always have to be hard work. It's sometimes just reorientating to the truth of what was, as opposed to diving into some deep dark hole, you know. So yeah, that was the first point. And then I suppose another point which we could probably do a whole episode on is the whole new age scene at the moment and where it's come to in the last few years can be questionable at best. There is a lot of people with a lot of basic qualifications. So they maybe done I've heard people weekend workshop it and then go and be a facilitator a week later. You know, these people have not done the inner work to get to, like, they may know the techniques to go, oh, I can do that. But if you haven't done the work inside, there's just there's no hope of you being able to truly support someone else going through what could be tough stuff. So really, really vet your practitioners and see what their history is, how long they've been working on themselves, where they're coming from, what it is they're doing. And yeah, you were saying kind of, I forget the wording now, but make sure your practitioner is empowering you, not them doing the work for you, or saying they're doing the work, or giving you a distance healing or some sort of something or other, because that seems to be quite a common one now in that. And I'm not saying it can't be done, it just gets a bit problematic in terms of rocking up to a session and expecting someone else to do the work for you, and your responsibility is little to none in terms of diving into your stuff. And I see that quite a lot these days. And again, to me, that's a bit of a worrying, problematic thing, because well, we know the new age industry, there's now quite $1 billion industry, and all this kind of self-help and personal development can be fraught with a lot of stuff. And yeah, it just, to me, that's not truly the healing that needs to happen, you know. The way I always say it is, as a facilitator, I can only move the furniture out of the way so you can run in a straight line, you know, but I can't make you run, and I can't do anything more than that, you know. So it's about empowering you to dig deep within yourself and do the work for you. And again, if your practitioner is not empowering you to do that, giving you the tools to do that, giving you support to do that, then I'd be questioning, what are they really doing? Because you can get an insight, and like I call it kind of like a brain fart of like, your brain goes, oh wow, it's relieved for a minute, and you get an insight to something, but it has not changed anything within you. It's just given you a momentary release that hasn't gone deep enough to create true change. And that true change is where the uncomfortable bit is. And I'm not saying that all the time you need to be diving into the dark and doing all that kind of stuff. There's a place for both in tandem, and they need to be kind of, you know, worked out in symbiosis. But yeah, it seems to be a worrying trend that a lot of people are now Insta shamans and Insta fucking tantra teachers and Insta healers and all this kind of weird stuff of like, yeah, no. Just because I get half naked on the internet doesn't mean I'm a tantra teacher, you know. That's not how it works.
Yeah, that's true, man. There's a lot of, you know, what do they call these? They call them charlatans. A lot of professed healers and the rest of it. And yeah, I'm not going to go on with what I agree with what you said. There's a lot of bullshitters out there. That's what I'll call them. Yeah. I think also what I wanted to add to what you're saying is, you know, at the end of the day, right, awareness is key in understanding and seeing all this sort of stuff. But our stories really, you know, this may sound, some people might make sense with this, others may not, but really it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it doesn't stop us, or doesn't stop me from, you know, still living my life in this world. You know, it doesn't define who I am. And that's what's important, is it doesn't define you, right? And that's why it's important to like do this sort of work, but not get caught up in it. Like it's your whole life now for the next 10 years. And I've done that, right? Ben's done that. It's just, let me tell you, it's not fun. So it's important to, and for a little while I thought this is how it had to be. But because I didn't know any better. And the way I was being facilitated was no kind of awareness around that. So this is a good example of when you find someone, and I thought they were like in my best interest. But it wasn't really that way, right? Yeah, I was getting those brain farts that you talk about, Ben, and insights, and every now and then something would sink and drop in my body. But there wasn't the structure after, like, you know, how do I kind of structure my life so it's not constantly in yeah, how am I integrating all this stuff, right? Yeah. So it's kind of important to have all these things, you know, have the awareness, go through the work, integrate, get your structure, understand, and also realize that none of it matters. It really is not going to stop you from living your life and creating what you want in this world. It will only stop you if you really believe it. You know, there's a great saying, whatever you resist persists. And there's a great book by the same title by Robert Fritz, who talks about structure. He talks about, you know, you can have these brain farts and have these insights, but are they changing anything, like you were saying, Ben? How much is it changing in your life? Is it addressing the underlying stuff that sits below that surface level that we are here, you know? Is it addressing that? Have you changed the structure of why? And changing the structure of why is needing to understand what are the key components of that structure to look at, and which way do I want to go, right? So I'm not saying it's easy, but it's not that hard either. A lot of the time it's just practice.
Yeah.
And practice, it doesn't matter. And as we've said before, it's just acknowledging it within yourself and going, okay, well, you know, as I always say, I like to say to my clients, you know, what's the key emotion in what you're feeling? What's the main coping strategy that you have with it? And what's the worst case scenario that is a possibility? And sometimes just by addressing those three things and just being aware of that, it kind of dissipates the intensity, because you can kind of see it from an adult that, like, you know, my inner kid's reacting to some stimulus that reminds me of some childhood thing or whatever as an adult, or something that confronts me, I'm triggered, whatever terminology you want to use. But then if we can just have like a certain structure, like that's my structure. What's the main emotion? What's the main compensating strategy? And what's the worst case scenario? And then that kind of draws me into that to have a look and acknowledge and go, okay, let me see it as an adult. Me, currently now an adult, not some, you know, triggered child that never had my feelings or I was never validated. Not from that triggered little kid, but from this adult who's present right now. Let me look at these things.
Yeah.
And what comes up, and just acknowledge that. And then just go, you know what? I'm having this as an experience, because my subconscious remembers experiences, right? Subconscious is like everything is stored there. So I'm remembering this experience. I'm saying to it, you know what? I'm having this experience. It's already a memory. It's not as bad as, you know, I'm looking around. It's okay. And then my subconscious going, hey man, it's all right. Not too bad. So every time I have that same trigger, I just follow the same process. And that's my structure, right? That's what I do. Ben does maybe something different, maybe you guys do other things. It doesn't really matter what you do, but as long as you've got a key component of a structure that can put you into it to give you the awareness to then go, okay, what's going on? Yes, okay, my experience, I'm feeling this way, triggers this. Okay, cool, thank you. Take some breaths and then choose what I want to do and take the next step.
Pattern interruption, that's kind of partly what I call that. You know, it's like when the brain's kicked over into that downward spiral of thinking of whatever it's thinking. The more you catch that and change it, again, that gets to a critical mass point of like you catch it so many times, as soon as you get to that 51%, it starts to become an automatic habit, and you pattern interrupt the spiraling thought system, and it's work, you know, but that's one of the most simple ways for me to break the habitual monkey mind pattern of, oh, poor me, or whatever the fuck is going on, or this is happening again, or this is what it is, or blah, blah, blah. So, yeah.
Yeah, having some structure is important around that. I think, you know, essentially that's what we're saying is having, and it's true, the more you catch yourself, the more you become aware.
Yeah.
The more you become aware, the more less impact that thought process, whatever it is, has on you. And it's like you're saying, becomes habitual. It's almost like when I'm doing working with clients, for example, that have like breathing difficulties, right? Respiratory, sleep apnea, you know, anxiety, always trying to suck in air, looking for air, taking big sighs. A lot of the time, when they're triggered by a stimulus, right, I just call it like a stress stimulus, because stress is like an umbrella word that defines so many different things these days. So for like keeping it simple, any kind of external stimulus that may trigger an internal stress, right, how are they dealing with it in that moment? For a lot of them, they kind of, that's it, they just stop and they're not even aware of it, or they do this, or they clench their jaw. All of a sudden, what happens? Our breathing stops, right?
Yeah.
Our breathing stops, and then we start to either breathe through our mouth, taking in so much air. And then what does that do? That kind of triggers our parasympathetic nervous system. What's that? That's the fight or flight system. I'm sure everyone's familiar with that term. Now, in the past, if that happened, you'd either, like, you know, running away, or you basically, you know, you're either going to die or you're going to live. Either way, you're the predator or you're, you know, the prey, one of the two. In this day and age, the stimuluses are still the same. Even though we may be clothed and we have like nicer things, a bit more civilized, that primitive thought process and that primitive reaction neurologically from the brain to the body hasn't changed. But how do we, these days, we internalize things, right? We don't get rid of our stress because we don't get rid of the adrenaline that gets pumped into your body. So that's what I will say to people is like, you know, your first step is just to become aware of how you breathe throughout the day. Even if you do it once in a day, that's a win. If you don't do it, it doesn't matter. You try again the next day. And then the more times you start to notice that, the more times you start to go, okay, I just need to like pause and relax, get my breath back to normal, drop my shoulders, have a look what's going on for me, and then just take a little breath and move on. And the reports I get from clients that do that start to notice the difference. It doesn't change their world dramatically, but what does it do? It gives them that sense of awareness of how they are in their day-to-day life. What triggers them, right? What are some of the stimulants that cause them that reaction? They become aware of that. Then we start to go into other processes. How do we, like, you know, do we need to write it down? Do we need to do a visualization? Do we need to do a breath session? Do we need to do some body work? Do we need to move? Whatever it may be, right? But the thing is, the first step to anything is just having that awareness. And I think that's essentially, I mean, I go on a lot about awareness because I think it's really important, because when we're aware, to me, we start to become self-empowered, right? Because we kind of put power back into us. So we're not looking for someone outside of us to empower us, you know? We're empowering ourselves. And that's one of the fundamental keys to being a creative warrior. For me, that's it. You know, when I empower myself, nothing can stop me. No one can stop me. And that's important. And I think that's where it always starts, is awareness. And like you were sharing, Ben, you know, there's a lot of like bullshit artists out there that do a weekend course and call themselves, you know, a healer or practitioner or body worker or tantra worker or whatever, you know, spectrum that they're in. And they may have a couple tools, or they may have, like, you know, done a couple techniques, but have they embodied the work? Have they actually embodied what they're trying to impart to you? Have they experienced it for themselves firsthand and are able to share what it's like? Or are they just reading off a manual and just doing mechanical techniques which they have no connection to? Personally, you're not going to get too much out of that, because to me, am I being an empowered individual by allowing someone who doesn't resonate with the work to facilitate me? Well, naturally, no, because I kind of know these days, I know who I work with. I look someone who's been in the industry, like someone like Ben. I trust Ben. I'm easy booking with to see Ben because I know that he's going to be of service, because he's like myself. We're here to be of service to ourselves and to the world, to others in the world. That's what we're here to do. And we can hold that space. So not that I'm saying you need to find people, like I said before. The key thing is, when we have awareness, we empower ourselves. The more we become aware, the more empowered we become. That's the point of that long story.
Yeah, very cool. I think we might even start to wrap it up there. Any final thoughts? My brain's starting to shut down, so I'm slightly losing it.
Well, you've done pretty well, mate, to go this long. So, yeah, I think we've shared a lot. I think, as usual, we pack in a lot in such a small amount of time, right? So, yeah, guys, you know, feel free to reach out if you've got any questions about anything that we talk about. Some things don't make sense, or, you know, whatever it may be. You may just want to say g'day or whatever it is. You know, we're more than happy to respond. And you know, if you've got a topic you'd want us to talk about, we're more than happy to have a chat about that as well. So yeah, so another great podcast with the masterful Ben Gear and myself, the Wandering Warrior. And I'm not wandering anyway. I'm staying here. So we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, get in touch if you want clarification. And like Ron said, we're always here to support greater awareness at the end of the day, because ultimately that's what's key. And yeah, once you understand, then you can start to dive in. And yeah, that's what we're all about. So yeah, appreciate you, mate. Thanks heaps. And until next time.
See you guys.